is it more important what foods you eat, like the individual foods you eat, or do we actually need to know how the heck we are supposed to eat?
Well, I think we all know that what we eat has an impact on our health. And I think that's kind of a given. You understand that if you eat a donut, it's not going to be the same as eating a piece of broccoli. But the how we eat is actually very important because that donut, depending on how you eat it, when, after what, is going to have a different impact on your physical and mental health. So I think I want to bring into the conversation the how.
Right.
So that you learn how to eat all the stuff you love in a way that is better for your health.
Right. Okay. So did you read the Zone Diet back?
No.
Yeah.
But I
Do you
heard a
know
lot
about
about it. I heard about it.
Okay, so I was just writing about this in my new book, and I was talking about my journey with nutrition. And the Zone Diet I read when I was in college. I was a competitive tennis player, and the idea, as you know, but to fill everybody else in, was that when you had a plate, that you would look at your plate and you would say, I want a handful of protein, I want a handful of a carbohydrate, and I want a half a handful of fat. And that you never left that idea in your mind when you put a meal together.
What about veggies and fiber?
He didn't really talk about that because remember, now this was back, I just recently looked this up. It was back in like the 1990s. And he, back then we were low fat.
Yes.
So I think he was trying to bring fat back into the conversation. And his most profound thing that he said is that when bread comes to the table, the worst thing you can do is not put butter on it.
Love it. So he was really trying to push fat back into the conversation, right? That's so interesting. And these fads come and go. I was talking yesterday to this person. He was like, so what do you think? Is it better to be vegan or keto? I'm like, listen, whatever diet you choose, what all these diets have in common is that they cut out processed foods and they tell you to eat less crap, essentially. So whatever's going to help you get on the path to eating more whole foods is helpful.
Right.
But I'm really anti-fad, and I really don't like
anti-fat?
Anti-fad.
Oh,
fad
okay,
diet.
Okay, I'm just
You're like, what?
I'm
No.
like, wait, we're going
Fat's
down a
great.
whole other path now.
No, and I really don't like it when my work is categorized as a diet.
Me too.
Right? Because I'm like, diet means fad, okay? Means restrictive, means you're only going to do it for 10 days and then binge all the Oreos in the back of your cupboard. So it's not a diet. And I think you and I have that in common. We're trying to teach people these principles. And to me, the hacks that I share, they're on the same level as brush your teeth, drink water, wear sunscreen, have a savory breakfast, right?
Yes.
Like, to me, that's the public health level at which we're operating.
Yes.
But every time you hear food, especially as women, we've been bombarded with messages.
Yes.
The 30-day fad, this,
Yes.
the 30-day diet, this, lose 5 pounds in one day, lose 30 pounds in 1 hour. I mean, the marketing is wild.
Yep.
So we really need to go against diet culture that is just trying to make money off your back and teach people physiology, how your body works so you can get agency and freedom back.
Yes. Okay, so let's go back because I have so many thoughts just on that one thing alone. Let's go all the way back to like the day somebody's born. Okay, I have this philosophy in my own head that the day we are born, a human comes out into the world.
When's your birthday? When were you born?
October 15th, 1969. Is that relevant?
I just wanted to know your birthday.
I love it. I'm a Libra.
Nice. I'm a Gemini, June 16th.
Oh, so I don't know who's going to show up here. How this is going to go down. But we come out and everything that we're taught about our health is outside in. So it's, if you're sick, you need a pill. If you're under stress, then we're going to, again, put you on a pill. When you eat for your taste buds. Like nothing is from the inside out.
I love this quote from Alan Watts. He said, the animal eats with its stomach. The man eats with its brain. So we are sort of intellectually trying to decide what to eat, but we're not connected to what our bodies really need.
Right. So I love that. And I want to add into that something that I know you're really passionate about, which is our taste buds are now hijacked from chemicals in our food. So the human being born today is in really bad shape because of the food quality mixed with this lack of education on how. So I tell you all that to say, if you were to go back to a newborn baby, a new mom, and you were going to teach this new mom how that baby what's the food philosophy that baby needs to know, what would it be?
Okay, I would say the first thing that comes to mind, especially relevant for kids and teenagers, is do not have dessert for breakfast. Breakfast is not dessert time. All of the breakfast food that you see today are total man-made inventions that make a lot of money to the food industry. But this breakfast cereal and the fruit juices and the fruit smoothies and the granola, and that is
Go-gurt.
dessert. Yeah, that is dessert, right? Breakfast is a normal meal. So breakfast should be savory. And then I would also tell this mom, listen, your kid is going to grow up in a world where quote unquote processed and bad junk food is everywhere. So you need to teach your kid to maximize the pleasure they're going to get from the donut, because everybody wants something sweet once in a while, but you have to teach them how to eat that in a way that's going to be less harmful to their health. And the most basic place to start is to say, if you want to eat something sweet, something processed, something junky foody, have it for dessert after a meal, never for breakfast, never on an empty stomach, right?
So you're pulling sweet out of the meal.
Exactly. I'm taking sweet out of breakfast. Yes. And then I'm saying, if you want to eat something sweet, it should be at the end of a meal for dessert, never on its own, never first thing in the morning, because that way you're getting the dopamine hit, which is this innate reward system.
Yeah.
You know, we get a hit of this pleasure molecule when we eat something sweet.
That's right.
But if we have the sweet thing at the end of a meal after there's already other foods in our stomach, we're going to reduce the glucose spike from it. And it kind of aligns so perfectly with this concept of we need to give our body more rest from eating, more fasting windows, which is why instead of having, for example, a sweet snack at 4 p.m., which is what I did every day coming home from school, don't do that. Have the sweet thing after dinner or after lunch, not in the middle of the day at random times where the sugar is going to arrive so quickly into your bloodstream and create a spike.
Yeah. So when I was in clinical practice and was sitting down really trying to change people's behaviors around food, breakfast was the hardest behavior to change.
I know, girl.
Because the two things everybody wanted to eat was have a glass of orange juice and a bowl of cereal.
Yeah.
And when I would say we're going to take that out, I mean, this is how I stumbled upon fasting. I was like, let's just take breakfast all out.
You're like, I can't deal. Just cancel breakfast.
It was definitely that. It was out of like, let's cancel breakfast because people couldn't get breakfast right.
Yeah.
So give me an example. If I was to eat breakfast, what would be a good breakfast for glucose?
So breakfast should be, or by the way, the first meal of your day, no matter what time it is.
Thank you.
It can be 6 a.m. It can be 4 p.m. I do not care. The meal that will break your fast should be savory, should be built around protein.
Thank you.
Have some healthy fats and fiber in there. You can put some starch in if you want, but just for taste, right? You can put a slice of bread. You can put some potatoes. You can have some oats, but just for taste, never as the main character, okay? The starch is not the star of your break fast meal. And then if you want to eat something sweet during your breakfast, you can have some whole fruit. But again, for taste, okay? So the worst breakfast for your glucose levels would be a glass of orange juice, oats with honey,
oatmeal.
And oatmeal, for example.
The freaking oatmeal. Yes. Everybody does that.
And so, and I think people don't realize that if you change your breakfast to something that keeps your glucose levels steady, you will feel so different. Your mitochondria will make energy more effectively. You're going to be less cravings, less tired throughout the day. You're going to have fewer cravings. It will truly transform who you are as a person. It has that deep of an impact.
Agreed.
To me, it's, you know, when in the movies somebody walks through the mirror and goes to the parallel universe, it's like you have the sweet breakfast universe where you feel like crap all day, and the savory breakfast universe where you're like, oh my God, my brain is clear. I have energy to do stuff that I want to do. It's that transformative. And that's why in my method, it is the first hack you go after. It's the first thing to change.
First meal of the day.
Yes, the first meal of the day.
Okay, so I have a ton of things to say on that because in Fast Like a Girl, when Hay House picked it up, I said they wanted to rearrange a few things in my table of contents. And one of the things everybody asked is, do we really need a whole chapter on how to break a fast?
You were like, yes.
I was like, absolutely. Every single fasting book that has come out, we have not addressed how do you go back into food. So
it's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem.
If you fast for 16 hours and then you have orange juice and oatmeal, you're up your body.
Absolutely.
Because after a long fast, your digestive system is so empty and so sensitive. Anything you give it is going to go straight into your bloodstream. You have to be super cautious.
So agreed. And talk about why more, I mean, I look at that first meal through the lens of the microbiome. So where I want to go in this thought process for all humans is that there's this belief that it's like our human cells that control blood sugar levels, and we, like, the bacteria is just a nuisance we're going to push aside. But in the research that I've done, it's the microbes that are balancing your blood sugar. So when you go into a fasted state, you are reorganizing the whole terrain on the inside of the gut, which is helping these microbes. And that first meal you feed them is either going to make or break what you did to your microbiome during your fast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know much about microbiome research. You will probably teach me more about this.
Okay, check this out. I have a free fasting guide for you all. It's free. And it's going to teach you all the basics of fasting. It's going to teach you how to kill hunger when you fast, which is really cool. And it's going to show you how to break your fast, among many other things. All you got to do is click on this link right here and enjoy.
Great.
Teach me, tell me.
Okay, so this is the most current research that I saw, is that the microbes, actually, when we eat, they send a signal to the liver, and they coordinate with the liver through the hepatic, the hepatic portal vein. This is the one that I recently, like literally 2 weeks ago, I looked this up. I'm like, this is it. And it tells the liver how to regulate blood
Glucose.
sugar.
Yeah, the liver is the conductor of your glucose levels.
But it's the microbes
That's really interesting.
in the gut that are telling the liver.
That's super interesting.
So if you feed those microbes something that makes them happy, in that first meal, you've now got a better shot at stabilizing blood sugar, which is why I think the apple cider vinegar works so well, because you gave the microbes the fuel they want.
Yeah, fermented foods, acetic acid, it's so good. It's not just the microbes though, because even in your stomach, there's already some responses that start and that tell your brain to, tell your pancreas to release insulin, that, align all of your hunger hormones. But it's so interesting that the microbes are actually part of this equation as well. I mean, it makes so much sense. It makes total sense.
So much sense.
Yeah.
Which then leads me, of course, my brain goes to women. And I'm like, okay, so women that have been on birth control for like decades. I sat with so many women who have been on like 10, 20, 30 rounds of antibiotics. And their microbes are completely decimated, and they are weight loss resistant. And they can't bring back the balance back into their body because of the destruction of the microbes. So from your perspective, when I dove into your work, I was like, oh, she's got the microbe thing down.
Yeah, absolutely. Because another thing I talk about a lot is fiber, right?
Okay, great.
Having fiber at the beginning of a meal, not only does it create this really wonderful mesh on your intestinal wall to prevent, first of all, leaky gut, but also to prevent glucose molecules from arriving too quickly into your bloodstream.
Right.
And then the fiber is also, your microbe's favorite food.
Right.
So it's all kind of connected. And what I love about the lens of the glucose hacks is that when you focus on them, so many other things fall into place. Glucose is not everything, of course. And you know that, I know that. It's not the end all be all.
The main thing though.
It's the main thing. It's for me, it's the main window through which to enter really in a beautiful, helpful, healing way your food habits. You see, so the fiber hack is the following. I explained that when you're going to have a lunch or a dinner, or by the way, it can also be a break, fast meal, whatever time that is, it's always very helpful to start with vegetables, because vegetables contain fiber. And when you have fiber at the beginning of a meal, this is very important, at the beginning of the meal, the fiber in the veggies has time to coat your intestinal wall and make this really protective mesh that then slows down any glucose molecules coming down later from pasta or cookies or whatever during the meal to make their way into your bloodstream too quickly. And also it impacts your microbiome in this really beneficial way. So if you're fasting for a long time, actually, yes, your meal should be savory, but if you can, on top of that, have your first mouthfuls be vegetables with fiber, it's going to be, the rewards on your blood sugar are tremendous, right? And you're going to extend the benefits of that fasting for so much longer if you do this.
Yeah, and 1,000% agree. And that is one thing that I really have been trying to emphasize is this metabolic switch.
Yeah.
That and this is why our work is so beautiful together, because what I feel like I really tried to do is teach people, like, let's come on over here and just take some breaks. Like, we just need to pause.
Just like give her a break, She needs to rest, girl.
Exactly.
Mama needs some time. Yeah.
Your whole metabolic system has just been messed up from this horrible food system that has kept you addicted, has got you I'm filled with all these obesogens. Let's just give it a break. And then people got a result. But then this challenge that I had was getting them to go back into food.
Yeah.
Because every time they went back into food, all of a sudden their blood sugar started to go too high and they started to gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
So with that idea in mind, if I'm putting a meal together, you just talked about fiber first. Give me just like, here's what you should have learned the day you were born.
Well, you should have learned that, you know, these sort of old school cultural habits that we have a lot in Europe of starting your meal with vegetables. So in France, we have crudité, which means raw veggies at the beginning of a meal. And when I arrived in your studio, you had this beautiful plate on the kitchen and there was some raw veggies there. And in Italy, for example, they have antipasti, which is usually roasted veggies at the beginning of a meal. In the Middle East, they start their meals with herbs by the bunch. We need to go back to these cultural traditions and we need to start our meals with a plate of vegetables. Now, this doesn't have to be complicated. It can be, even if you don't have time, just grab 2 baby carrots from the fridge or 3 cherry tomatoes. If you have time, maybe, you know, cook some green beans, roast some cauliflower. You can put some little sauce on there. Start your meals with vegetables. This will then dampen any glucose spike coming down afterwards from the rest of your regular meal. And if you do nothing else, if the savory breakfast sounds too complicated, if you do nothing else, at your next dinner, just add a plate of veggies to the beginning of your meal and then eat what you normally would eat, right? Don't change the rest of the meal. Just test this. And by doing so, you will reduce the spike of your regular dinner and you'll feel better. Better energy, fewer cravings, less hunger, less brain fog, less impact on your hormones, less impact on your sleep quality. And then slowly this virtuous cycle kind of puts itself into place and you're actually eating more than usual, but you're also craving less sugar and less junk food.
Yeah.
And it's like a wedge. You just put it in, puff, and then you open this world of steadier blood sugar levels and feeling so much more like yourself.
Oh, I love that. And you know where my brain goes to? Just from like sitting with so many people, this is literally what I think somebody would say or listening would say, well, what if I don't like veggies?
I think you can find recipes that you'll like. Try a broccoli soup, you know, with some cream in there. Try some roasted cauliflower with some tahini and Parmesan. Like, come on.
There's something you
and
can
I got
try.
a ton of recipes to help you.
Yeah.
And listen, if you don't like veggies and you don't want to try this, that's totally your prerogative. But I believe there's something in there for everybody. I think most of us maybe have this idea that veggies are gross, you know, like the really bitter Brussels sprouts or really bitter zucchini just boiled in some water. Yeah, of course, veggies can be gross, but veggies can also be really damn good. So you just have to put a little bit of work in and see what works for you.
And I have a belief that your microbes, we're back at the microbes. I'm a little mildly obsessed with the microbes right now.
No,
because I think they're like the forgotten hero.
But they tell you what you want to eat, actually.
That's right. So when I first started studying fasting, there was a beautiful book that came out called The Every Other Day Diet.
Okay.
Have you ever?
No.
Okay. And this is what this woman did. She was a researcher. She took a group of people that had high cholesterol, had extra weight, high blood pressure, all the horrible metabolic markers. And she said, you eat whatever you want every other day. But on the days that you're not eating, you're fasting. And so they took this group, right? I know. Can you imagine taking like the standard American diet person through that experiment? She did lose like about 15 to 20% of the group.
Can I be honest? That sounds horrible. That sounds like the worst thing to do.
Do you know that a lot of people fast that way?
Really?
To this day?
But that's unfortunate because I think if you do that, you're not actually feeding your body good food.
Okay, but this is the part that was magic.
Tell me.
Is that at the end of a year, what ended up happening is everybody lost weight, everybody's cholesterol improved, all the metabolic markers were better, but the biggest shockaroo was their taste buds changed.
Good.
And so they started making smarter choices.
That's great.
And so this is why I'm such a fan of feeding your microbes, is because they control your taste buds.
Completely.
So if you take somebody who has a massive sugar addiction, and in your experience, you start giving them fiber at the front of every meal, feeding those microbes, what have you seen as far as their cravings in what period of time?
Well, in a few days, the cravings for the chocolate bar at 4 p.m. dissipate. And I'm sure there's a microbe angle, but also what I know is that there's a big glucose angle in the sense that if you reduce glucose, look, so every time you eat too many carbs or sugars, you experience a big blood sugar spike and then a drop. And that drop has been shown to activate this craving center in your brain, telling you like, Mindy, eat some ice cream. Eat some ice cream. And you can't resist that
chocolate.
voice.
It's usually chocolate.
Chocolate, okay.
Those microbes.
And that is the craving center in your brain telling you to find something sweet because your blood sugar levels are low. Now, there's surely another microbiome path as well to this that I don't know much about yet, but I want to look more into this. And so you have all these different pathways activating where unsteady blood sugar levels and eating too many processed carbs are just going to increase your cravings. And then there's the dopamine, right? And then you're tired because your mitochondria are exhausted from all the glucose spikes. And so you're just like, oh, you feel so lethargic. So you want some dopamine.
You want more.
So what I see is just by adding, for example, a veggie starter or having a savory breakfast instead of a sweet one, you act so profoundly on that glucose spike. The glucose spike reduces, the glucose crash reduces. So the activation of your craving center in your brain is just not happening as much anymore.
Brilliant.
So if you want to eat chocolate, you're doing it from a place of enjoyment and pleasure, not a place of like, I need something sweet right now, like anything, give me a chocolate bar. You know that feeling?
Yeah,
It's a very different world to be in that feeling versus to be in the feeling of, hey, you know what? I think tomorrow I'm going to go get my favorite chocolate cake at this bakery.
Yes.
And you're having fun and you're enjoying it and you're looking forward to it, but you're not a victim. You're not controlled by the urge. And that's what happens when you steady your glucose levels.
It's like an empty hole is what I've noticed. Like people are just eating. And you know, even in the research that I've seen, that dopamine in people that are more obese, they actually don't get the same enjoyment out of their food that their dopamine, because they're just so dopamine saturated.
Yeah.
And how I discovered that was looking at the 48-hour fast, which is a dopamine reset, because the research shows is that all of a sudden these new dopamine receptor sites open up.
That's fascinating.
And I found that through the lens of looking at the research on people who are obese. And it honestly gave me a whole new level of compassion for the person who struggles to lose weight, because they are not getting the same dopamine hit. They're not filling up. And so they're just eating and eating and eating, trying to help themselves feel normal like they did years ago.
This idea that if you're fat, you're lazy is such bullshit.
It's total bullshit.
Everybody wants to be healthy and feel good. Nobody's doing this on purpose, feeling like, oh, I want to fuck up my body. We are all just sort of victims to our physiology, what's going on, our dopamine, our microbes, our glucose spikes, glucose crashes. We're out of control. Right.
Agreed.
But everybody wants to feel good. And then you add to that all these marketing messages. Hey, this product has no sugar added, or this product is vegan, you know, and you're like, oh, that must mean it's good for me. Actually, it's full of processed sugar and processed carbs, and it's making you sicker. So we are kind of in a situation where people are locked into this place of, I want to feel better, but everything around me is giving me bad information, and I'm just feeling worse and worse and worse. Which is why going back to physiology and the biochemistry of your body and kind of common sense, like the stuff I talk about, it's common sense.
It's super common sense.
It's super common sense. But now we have the science to understand why it's so good. And then I want everybody to go back to this common sense stuff.
Yeah. But it's a lot like the work that I'm doing, where what I hear, and I'm sure you hear this all the time from people, they go, God, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we've just so overcomplicated food. So, and we've just taken all the power away from the person.
For sure.
So.
If you love this video, I did a great video called Should You Eat Eggs Every Day for Breakfast? So you need them to make things like serotonin and dopamine, the neurotransmitters that give us a good mood balance, make us happy, make us calm, give us joy and satisfaction. The precursors for those neurotransmitters are all inside this little egg.